Hello, I'm Demsky and we are right here at ETHPrague with David Mihal from CryptoStats. Welcome, David. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Great to be here. Great to be in Prague and with all these amazing people at ETHPrague. So I'm having a great time.
So for starters, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your project, CryptoStats?
Sure. Yeah, so I am a software engineer. I've been working in crypto for, since like 2017, 2018, since like last bull market. And I've worked in like a number of different projects since then. I was working on a project called Burner Wallets a lot in the beginning. I've kind of done a lot of freelance work for a bunch of different DeFi projects and other projects in the space. And, I'm still working on a few projects, but the main thing I'm focusing on right now is a project called CryptoStats. And CryptoStats is a kind of project where our goal is to make data metrics in the kind of crypto and blockchain ecosystem open, free, trustworthy to everybody.
Okay. Can you actually tell me how are you, let's say, picking up the stuff from the blockchain? How are you like collecting the data? What tools are you using for that?
Yeah, so I think of kind of the data pipeline as data kind of originates on a blockchain itself. You've got like the raw data, the transactions, the events, the smart contracts, and the state of those smart contracts. So that's kind of the raw data, and then the next step is to kind of to index that data, to kind of transform it and store it in a database to make it a bit more accessible. And so that's where most of the time we use the graph whenever possible. We'll pull data from any kind of indexer that's available, but I think it's always best to pull from something that's open and decentralized as possible. And right now the graph is the best at that. But we want to be pragmatic and pull every kind of data we can, and there's still some things that you can't quite get from the graph. So we'll pull data from there's kind of more centralized projects like Coinmetrics is a great project that provides a lot of data. We use things like Xerion sometimes, in CoinGecko, and we need pricing data and stuff like that. So the idea is to kind of pull from all of those and then take it to our layer, which we think of as kind of the aggregation and normalization layer. And that's where you take data, from a lot of different data sources, data that might be formatted differently, data that might need to be transformed a bit, or, data from two different sources that need to be combined. And we put it together and give like return some output that's, kind of uniform, normalized across every different protocol and easy for developers to use. And, our goal is to provide data to what I think of as the last part of this data process, which is the presentation layer. So these are the websites that we all kind of know and love. The website that kind of led to this project being started was a site that I run called cryptofees. So this is like a really simple website with a table, a bunch of fee revenue things on it. So that's one example, but the goal is to make this data available to anybody so that the best front end developers or the best data visualization people, like anyone who has a cool idea on how they can present data to people and help educate people, they can do that in as best a way as possible without having to worry about like, oh, I need to like get data for all these different projects. Like we just give them the data and let them do whatever they want with it. Okay,
so understanding this correctly, this is a more a tool for the developer side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tool for, developers of websites or things like that. We provide some tooling that they can get that data easily. Developers of websites or anyone who wants to use data. We've talked to kind of like VCs and stuff like that. A lot of funds have their own data operations. They don't just go to a lot of them do go to sites like CryptoFees, but a lot of them have their own internal
like systems.
They have people whose job is to kind of process data, so they can pull data from us. We give it to news sites, like even Bloomberg has been pulling data from us for a bit, which is super cool. Anyone who wants to pull data, like we're not trying to be like the website people go to check data. We want to give the data to other websites and let them do cool stuff with it.
All right, beautiful. I have a bit of like more general question coming up. What do you think are the future trends of basically Web3 and cryptocurrencies? So if you look at the back, we had some waves, we had some, narratives. What do you think is like next thing or something?
Yeah, it's a great question. You can kind of look at the different levels of the stack, and I think if we look at more like the infrastructure side of things, it's a little easier to say like, scaling is obviously the problem everyone's been trying to solve basically since blockchains have been invented. And I think we're at a really exciting point in scaling. I've been really excited about like layer 2s for years, and I've been kind of waiting for them. And we're kind of getting to the point where they're becoming real. We've had Arbitrum's been live for almost a year, and Arbitrum is doing really well. Optimism is kind of picking up steam. We're going to start seeing a lot more competition between these layer 2s. Some of the ZK rollups are going to be coming online soon. And even like, I think there's like a shift in the way people are thinking about like, kind of modular blockchains is the way people are describing it. That will have kind of rollups are basically execution layers. You've got data availability layers like, Ethereum in the future will be more of a data availability layer, and projects like Celestia, settlement layers. Again, Ethereum is obviously a settlement layer. And, even outside of the Ethereum space, I think we're seeing these types of trends in the Cosmos ecosystem and the Tezos ecosystem. So scaling is certainly, I think, like one of the most exciting parts right now. If you go up the stack to the application layer, I think it's a little trickier because we're still kind of figuring out like what's we've had a bunch of like kind of hype cycles, I guess. There was DeFi was really big for a bit, and it kind of cooled off. And then of course NFTs had this really crazy wave, and that's cooled off a bit too. And again, none of them have gone away, but they've cooled down. There's talk around DAOs and things like that. So I'm not totally sure what the next iteration in like the application layer is, but the nice thing is, if we're going into a bear market, which seems like it, especially today, that ETH has dropped quite a bit. But the nice thing about bear markets is they do tend to kind of like wash out some of the noise. I had such a good time in the last bear market, and last bear market was when DeFi got built. And I was coming to conferences just like this one and seeing, people were building these amazing DeFi things, and I was like, I can't believe the rest of the world like doesn't see we're building a new financial system and nobody cares. And then like, a year later, like everybody cared all of a sudden. So I'm sure like if we're in another bear market, there's going to be some amazing stuff built, some really cool innovation, and then a year or two after we build it, maybe people will actually get excited about it. So.
Well, surely, the waves come and go, and it's very natural for the crypto space to go, let's say, into a cleaning or cleansing phase. It's actually pretty important and pretty key for the whole ecosystem to grow, because if we would just go up only, I don't know where we would be now. I mean, I guess we would be rich, but you need to also slow down. Like, also in this, like, let's say, life phase where things calm down, we get to building and then just producing better stuff, and also the cleaning part is pretty important.
Absolutely.
What is the biggest challenge in the cryptocurrency sector right now? Like we have talked about scaling. I believe scaling is pretty important. We can see some L2s coming up. They are pretty, I would say they are running pretty well. They have eased up on the load on the Ethereum blockchain in a way. But if we think about it a little bit more in like a general way, what is the biggest challenge that we are facing in the whole sector?
I mean, again, we've talked about some of the technical challenges, but kind of bigger picture than that, I think like, regulation is certainly going to be a challenge. We're starting to see governments kind of paying more and more attention. To be honest, I think everything that's happened with Terra in the last month and a half, stuff like that, that's going to really like increase to be honest, I think it's going to put the industry back a little bit because it was something that really hurt a lot of people. And I think regulators are going to pay a lot of attention to that. So that's certainly like, it'll be challenging. It's tough because, as like an engineer, those things are very like, technical problems are nice. Scaling, it's like, oh, we can sit down, we can think through how to solve scaling. Regulation, government, stuff like that, that's, I'm sure there's ways to address it, but it's not what us engineers are like comfortable dealing with. So that's certainly one. But yeah, aside from that, figuring out the best ways to kind of engage with end users. So a lot of that's user experience. Blockchains still it's gotten a lot better, but there's still such a long way to go in terms of giving users like a good user experience where they don't feel like they're, you know, copying like long hexadecimal strings and writing down 16 words that they, you know, if they lose, then all their money disappears. So yeah, there's a lot of user experience things to deal with, and kind of tying in with that, like of course bridging the traditional world to kind of the crypto world. It's still hard for people to, you know, get money from their credit card or their bank account in. Like again, these are all things that have gotten a lot better, but there's still I think a long way to go in terms of kind of connecting those together.
Yeah. How has the Web3 or crypto space changed in the last, I don't know, couple of years? And what do you predict will happen in the future? It doesn't have to be like a 100% prediction, but if we look like 5-10 years to the future, what do you think is going to be like?
I mean, the biggest thing I've seen change in the last few years is just the people in the space. You know, it's certainly grown substantially. And I think we've talked about kind of some of the different like waves and cycles that have come, and each one I think brings in a unique type of people. You know, if we kind of go to you know, I guess Bitcoin originally was kind of a technology project, but, you know, I think it pretty quickly evolved into more of like an economic project. So it kind of attracts people who are very, you know, tend to be maybe, you know, a bit more conservative, and they kind of view it as really this safe haven, this almost libertarian ideal. You know, Ethereum comes in and it kind of really brings the technology side of things back. So then you get the real nerds, the awesome, like super like smart people come in, and they're, you know, kind of exploring what we can do with this technology, you know, how we can scale it, how we can, you know, improve consensus, improve kind of, you know, all the different aspects of the technology. DeFi, I think, was like the first, you know, real like use case of kind of this technology outside of just things like Bitcoin. And so we saw a lot of financial innovation, and I think that started to bring in some financial people, you know, some Wall Street types start paying attention. Or I think even cooler is like people, you know, younger people who might have gone to a career in Wall Street, but then they go, actually, like this crypto stuff, this DeFi stuff is actually way more interesting. And yeah, again, the NFT side, I think the NFT has brought in the most, like the biggest divergence in the type of people, because all of a sudden we start bringing in like artists and musicians and, you know, digital artists, things like that, you know, kind of really bringing in very creative people. And that's been, I think, a very nice balance to the community, to a community that tended to be very technical and left-brained, and even the financial side was still like that. So, so that's, I think, given like a nice diversity to the people you see at events like this and stuff. And so predicting for the future, my guess would be we keep kind of growing that circle, growing the type of people that are in the space. There'll be more new innovations that appeal to a new type of person. You know, maybe it's, again, there's a talk about like, oh, our DAO is like the next big thing that's going to become very mainstream. And so maybe there's some, you know, maybe it's like people who are very political and they see DAOs as a way you can kind of politically organize and use money and capital to like push political projects forward. That's just kind of a random idea, but you know, as the technology progresses and we have new use cases, it'll kind of expand the tent of people that are interested in this stuff.
Sure. I mean, there has been talk about, for example, DeFi 2.0 and different types of DAOs that are tackling like different issues, and also in the NFT space, there is pretty nice, let's say, like upgrading the NFTs in general, even though, for example, on Ethereum, we would probably need to upgrade the ERC-721 standard, because as we all know, it's a little bit, you know, old-ish. So that's of course being worked on, as Annette was talking before. Yeah. And well, I would like to ask you, because since we are tackling also a couple issues about people and let's say mass adoption, what are the like common misconceptions people have in cryptocurrency space? Or basically, like if you would say Web2-ish people coming to the crypto space?
I think the biggest one, I mean, there's a lot of like kind of top of the head ones. It's like like NFTs are bad for the environment and stuff like that. But I mean, I think the one thing people get really caught up on is, you know, because Bitcoin is kind of like the entry point for most people into this whole space.
Agreed.
And, you know, Bitcoin, like in some ways, I think Bitcoin is actually kind of a more radical idea than a lot of stuff we do in crypto. Like, if you say like DeFi is, it's just like in a lot of ways, a better version of what we already have in the financial system. You know, there are stock exchanges and there are, you know, decentralized crypto exchanges like Uniswap. Like, that's not that big of a jump. You with NFTs, like there is art, there are, things like NFTs are just digital things, right? There are collectibles and things like that. And now there are digital ones, but I think a lot of people get caught with like, they want to understand it and they get caught on like, well, why does Bitcoin have any value? There's nothing backing it and stuff like that. And I think you're going to just lose some people off the bat. Whereas if they, kind of maybe skipped the Bitcoin side and started learning about some of the other spaces, like some of them might be easier to wrap your head around.
Yeah, sure, because Bitcoin has a couple narratives that are repeated again, and the Ethereum space, or let's say the smart contract space, and the dApps and everything is like much more flexible, and new stuff emerges every day. So definitely starting off there is it's pretty cool. Which brings me to our last question. Do you have a specific, for example, a book, magazine, podcast, or tool that you would like to, for example, recommend to people to continue their learning in Web3?
I'm a big podcast person, so I can probably easiest is to list some of those. Bankless is one of my favorites. I'm sure probably a lot of people listening have heard of Bankless and listened to Bankless. They're really great. The other ones, really like the Zero Knowledge podcast from Anna Rose is like, if people are technical, it's a podcast that's very technical. But I think that's one thing that makes it amazing. It's like you can, sometimes goes a little over my head, and I'm a pretty technical person myself. Okay. But when you can understand what's going on, it's like the highest value sometimes to be able to understand like the really interesting, like the really cutting edge stuff happening in crypto. So yeah, maybe those two.
Okay, I guess since this is already a second notice of the same podcast in this one day, I believe the podcast from Anna Rose would be definitely interesting.
I'm the second one to recommend her podcast. Yeah. Awesome.
All right, so thank you a lot, David, for joining us for this short interview.
Thanks for having me.
And we will see you at the next one.
Take care. Bye.